These my dollars make it hurt.
Welcome back. It's the Deep Cover Podcast. It's been a while. We shouldn't have left you without a podcast to step two. I feel like I say that every season at some point, but that's just how it goes sometimes. But we're back. We're back at you. It's Mike Crawford. It's Carey Stevenson. It's Chris Aguilera. Here to chop it up. All things Ravens. All things football. Really, fantasy football, whatever. We touch on it all. But before we dive into any of it, it's been a while since the people have heard from you guys. I'll start with you, Carey. How you been?
I'm good, man. Glad to be back with my brothers. Season getting ready to start. So, I'm heavy in prep mode, just, trying to get ready for all this. Just excited that, football is upon us.
Absolutely. I mean, preseason, how good has it been to have preseason games? Again, who would have thought, going back to 2019, right? Like we'd have a 2020 with no preseason and we'd be like fiending for preseason games. At least me. Maybe that's because of the preseason DFS greatest game known to man, by the way. But Chris, how you been, man? It's been a long time. It just a little behind the curtain so people know. I mean, we have, a little Twitter chat and we talk to each other that way, but we really haven't talked like this in a long time. So what's been going on, man? How are you?
I'm good, man. Like Carey said, man, I miss both you guys. I miss the conversation. I mean, we speak almost every day, through our little group chat, but it's different when you get to chop it up verbally and I get to see you guys and stuff like that.
Yeah, nothing like being able to see everybody. You can see the extra 10, 15 pounds I put on since last time. So I've been living good, right? People tell me like when you do that, you're blessed and highly favored. So
no more walks?
Yeah, well, no, the walks were still going on.
Okay.
And then I even took it to another level. I got one of these sauna vests. So not the weight joint, not the weight vest, but the sauna one that makes you sweat.
Yeah.
So I had that on. But I was walking, and most of the time when I was walking lately, I wasn't going early in the morning. I was going towards lunchtime. So here it's mid 90s, right? And I got this vest in the mid 90s. So things were going good with that. I mean, I feel like, I'm kind of sweating some of these pounds off. Then I got sick and I stopped walking for a little while. And then we went out, I started feeling better. It was nothing serious, thankfully. Vaccinated. Not that I need to tell anybody, but I am, because I ain't ashamed. But then we went on a couple of trips with the kids for vacation and just got away from it. So this has probably been the first week in the last, probably 4 or 5 weeks where I wasn't either sick or we were out of town. So I just got to get back in the groove. That's all.
Living that summer life. There's nothing wrong with that.
Nah, I think we all, had an opportunity to take some little trips or get some little time away. And, it's always a good thing, man. Anytime you can change your scenery for a little bit, get away from your normal day to day, that's never a bad thing.
Yes, sir.
But we are back.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are back to the normal scenery. And one of those things is the Ravens playing preseason games. They played 2 so far. They played the Saints 2 weeks ago, and just this past Saturday played the Panthers down in Carolina. I think we had our man Garnett live on the scene, not only at the joint practices, but in the Panther Stadium for the game, getting live reports.
Yeah, and he was over there recording everything, so we were able to see things too. And he was the first person I saw break the Mark Andrews news where he was dehydrated and suffering from cramps. So shout out to Garnett.
That's what I'm saying. He out there breaking news. On the scene breaking news. I remember he told me that he was going to be there at the joint practices and everything. And he's like, I got y'all, man. I got the whole flock. I'm going to be out there. I'm going to be tweeting stuff out. And he did not disappoint. He was giving us clips, breaking news and everything. But those 2 games have taken place. The Ravens won them both. Got the preseason winning streak up to 19 games, I think, 19 straight tied with one of the Packers teams, like old Packers teams, going back to Lombardi.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I like what they say about that, though. Whenever people bring it up and they say, hey, some people will say that it's preseason, it doesn't matter. And most of the guys say, look, if there's a scoreboard, we want to win. We're trying to win, right? Every time we step on the field, we're trying to win. It don't matter whether it's preseason, regular season, playoffs, whatever. Obviously, you're trying to win. But they're trying to win every time they take the field. And I think that mindset is just one of the things that have made them such a consistent organization. Is like, it's not about any of that other stuff. It's about winning. We're trying to win the game every time we're on the field, no matter what. So I think that's just one of those hallmarks of a consistent organization. But
yeah, and that stuff trickles down to the young guys that, you never know if these young guys are going to have to be put into action later on down the season. And, these reps are valuable that they're getting and learning how to win. Like if they're down in a preseason game, that's important. That's how you develop the DNA of a team from top to bottom.
Yeah, and we know 100% injury rate in the NFL. So injuries are going to happen, and guys who maybe didn't have as large a role are going to have to play. Maybe guys you weren't even expecting to have to play. Maybe guys who weren't even on your team. You're going to have to bring them in, and they're going to have to play. We saw that the whole league saw that last year with not just injuries, but with the effect of COVID. So yeah, you're 100% right about that. So this is good preparation for that. But I want to give both of you guys an opportunity to talk about those games. Anything that you saw, anything that you want to share. I'll start with you, Carey, and take it wherever you want to take it. You can start Panthers and work back. Start with the Saints, work forward. Just some of your takeaways from watching those games.
Yeah, my first thought, a lot of people want to kind of downplay the streak, 19 and winning 19 preseason games in a row. We know what preseason is like. There's a lot of different elements at play, a lot of things that teams are trying to accomplish that aren't necessarily about winning. You're trying to get certain guys reps and different looks against different defenses, offenses, however you want to do that. So to be able to kind of accomplish all those things and still win the game, and to do that 19 times in a row is super impressive to me. And then just a broader overall takeaway is just how deep and talented this team is, man. Like, it's going to be some real decisions that have to be made in secondary, at running back. They're stuff the brim on the edge. Like, this is a really, really deep, talented team, man. And like, I think I knew that kind of going in, but it's different when you see the progression of it through a preseason game where they come in waves, and you get to the third and fourth quarter, and you got guys like Dalen Hayes that are flying off of the edge, making plays, and all this stuff is kind of going on, and you're like, man, this is a really, really deep team, man. So hats off to DaCosta for putting this group together. I mean, it's not a perfect team by any means. There's some spots that aren't as deep as others, but all in all, I think is one of the deeper teams in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. We were talking about it a little bit before we started recording about just the quality of the depth too. I mean, it's not just like you have your twos and your threes like every team, but both of these games when those guys have gotten their chance and been on the field, they're making plays. I mean, it's not just out there going through the motions or kind of trying to find their way. There was 6 turnovers, 5 turnovers in the first game, whatever it was against the Saints. I mean, these dudes are out there making plays. But I don't want to ramble on too much because I want to hear from you guys. So, Chris, what did you think? What were your takeaways from those first 2 games?
So the first game against the Saints, it was pretty alarming as far as the O-line is concerned because they were just getting demolished up front. And, that was without some of the key starters that the Saints have. And, we know that a lot of the guys from the O-line were missing, like Zeitler, Obviously, Ronnie was missing, and then we don't know who's going to be the left guard yet. Although it looks like it might be Phillips, but that's for later on. And but it was looking bleak. But then the Carolina game, it kind of put me at ease because the whole left side in the middle, they were there and healthy for the game, and I thought that side just really solidified it, and it kind of eased my fears a little bit because we saw, I know you, Mike and Carey, we both spoke about this a few days ago, that how Zeitler, he was just winning his one-on-one matchups, and it's been so long since we had a guard who could just win one-on-one with no help, just consistently, just win. And I think just having that is going to do wonders for the team, and hopefully when Ronnie comes back and they have the left guard position solidified, hopefully they could click out the gate because, like we said, we've all been saying this, the O-line, they need time to gel, and the group has only the right side and Bradley Bozeman in the middle. They've had one preseason game to play, so we'll see who plays this weekend against the Washington football team. We'll see who plays, and hopefully by the time the week one comes along, we'll have a clearer understanding of how these guys are going to gel.
Yeah, that Saints game, particularly the early part of the game, it was rough for the O-line. But you know what made me feel a little bit better about it was seeing the Saints play again. I think it was last night against the Jags, and Marcus Davenport was doing the same thing. He was destroying dudes for the Jags. Yeah. It's like he was destroying dudes for the Ravens. So he just like bull rushing people, just knocking them on their backs. So I was like, okay, we'll see. He's doing it to everybody then. But obviously Cam Hayward, I'm sorry, not Cam Jordan. I'm thinking about the Steelers. Cam Jordan didn't play in that game against the Ravens. I think he played last night, some snaps. But man, Davenport and David Onyemata, I mean, don't sleep on those dudes. I mean, them dudes are legit up front. And I expected that they would play a little bit better. At least I was hoping they would play better against the Panthers, because usually that's what you see in football, even in preseason. If you come out and don't necessarily play well one week, in one particular area, you tend to come out the next week and play a little bit better. It's obviously there's going to be a focus on that during that week and in practice and everything. But, the other thing that I kind of noticed from the Saints to the Panthers too, obviously different D lines, different, personnel, individual matchups. So you have to factor that in. But, and this is no knock on Trace McSorley, but it's just something I've started to pay more attention to over the last maybe 2 years as I've been charting games is, goes by different names, but people call it QB set point, right? So when the quarterback, it's a passing play, quarterback takes his drop, where he's actually at, where he reaches the top of his drop and is getting ready to throw the ball in relation to where the line of scrimmage is. And if you go back and you look at a lot of those plays, and this is something I added to kind of my charting, Trace was getting to about 11 and a half, 12 yards in his drop. And that's tough on an offensive line, particularly the tackles, because that kind of depth creates different angles for those guys coming off the edge. It actually creates probably, more advantageous angles for them. And so if you can kind of step up, then you can kind of negate some of the negative impact of taking that deep of a drop. He wasn't really doing that. He was kind of just getting to 11 and a half and 12, staying there, and then trying to get rid of the ball. But then when you watch when Huntley comes in, he's around 9 and a half, 10 and a half. He really never quite got to 11 or 12. He was right around 9, 10 yards at the top of his drop. And you can see the difference. You can see the difference in the amount of pressure. Now, people will say, well, yeah, but there were different guys rushing when Huntley came in. You didn't have Davenport, you didn't have Onyemata. And that's true. You definitely have to account for that. But when Huntley got to go pretty much this entire game against the Panthers, including some of their starters on the D-line, that was kind of what I was expecting. I was like, well, look, if he's as consistent with his set point as he was against the Saints, against the Panthers, we shouldn't see as much of that edge pressure as we saw with McSorley in there. And we didn't. You didn't see as much of it. Aside from, a couple of plays, you and I, Chris, were talking about that block Gus Edwards kind of missed on that one play. So I'm not gonna say you didn't see any edge pressure, but when it was just like tackles, one-on-one against an edge guy, you didn't see as much of that kind of pressure in the Panthers game as you saw in the Saints game. And again, the individual players are a factor. I'm never going to downplay that, but I think QB set point sometimes plays a bigger role than people think, because those rushers, that's how you train. You're rushing to where you think the quarterback is going to be. That's the spot that you're trying to get to. And so when those guys are deeper, people might be thinking, well, okay, well, that's going to take them longer. But the angle becomes better for them. Yeah, they're further away in terms of their drop, but you have a narrower, a sharper angle, right, to that guy. It's actually, shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line kind of thing. So that was just something that I noticed, little nugget for the football nerd in me.
Yeah, a while ago, I saw an illustration of like how you would want it to be. So what you want is the O-line to make a U, and you step up in that U. But then when you drop too far back, what you're doing is you're kind of making a cone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you just said, it's a straight line. Yeah, I didn't notice that until you said it.
Yeah, a lot of people, you'll hear different ways to describe the shape of a pocket. Some people want a cup, some people want a dish, they want a flatter. The cup is like the U that you're describing, where it's kind of shallow in the middle and then it widens out on the edges. And the dish, think about a dish like a plate. It's a little flatter, right? It's curved, but it's a little flatter. And that was a big Howard Mudd thing. Longtime O-line coach for the Indianapolis Colts during Peyton's heydays. He was a big believer in the sort of dish pocket shape because he believed in the quick set or the jump set. He wanted his guys on the O-line to get their hands on the defenders right away. Like, he would always say, if you want to get beat, set back. Quickest way to get beat is set back. So he was like, I want my guys either stand on the line or maybe even, a step forward to engage these guys quickly. Now you have to guard against quick counter moves when you do that, right? A guy might swim you or try to spin you or something like that, kind of, cross you over. So you have to guard against that. But if you can, be on target with your hand placement, the timing of your hands, kind of getting that first meaningful contact on guys, I think you got a chance to take the fight to them and, to kind of make it a little bit more difficult for them to get into their rush. But different O-line coaches have different philosophies. I mean, some people believe in the vertical set. They want to create as much space as possible between them and the defensive line because that's a time factor, right? The more space there is, the more time it takes for them to get to the quarterback. So there's different strokes for different folks. But anyway, I could talk about that. How dirty I am. I can talk about that stuff forever. But anyway, let's get in to maybe a little bit, deeper level on the roster conversation, and we'll touch on a couple of the position groups here. I think we've kind of talked about some of them on a surface level, but you guys both mentioned the quality of depth of the talent on this team and how difficult some of these decisions are going to be for the coaching staff. So we can start because we just talked about this. Kind of a natural place to start. The offensive line, and I'll go to you this time, Chris. What are you thinking in terms of? You talked about we probably don't really have a clear idea of who the left guard is, but what do you think about the offensive line and maybe who ends up on the roster or who doesn't? Just, I know you talked about doing kind of some early 53-man predictions. How do you feel?
So as far as because we know left tackle, we know that's going to be Ronnie. Because all indications are pointing to his rehab is going well, and they're bringing him along slowly. So it looks like right now that he'll be ready to go week 1, hopefully. We know Bozeman's going to be there at center. We know Zeitler's going to be there at right guard. We know Villanueva's going to be there at right tackle. Right now, what's up in the air is the left guard situation. I personally think that Tyree Phillips is going to take that job. Not because of, anything that Ben Cleveland has done, because he hasn't really done anything yet. Because, he was out with a concussion, and, I'm glad that he's back and he's doing well, and he's back at practice. But you can't show what you can do when you're hurt. and that's just a simple fact. And Tyree Phillip, he's been out there. I mean, left tackle was looking a little shaky there. Not a little shaky. It was looking a lot of shaky. But at left guard, he's looked well at left guard, and he's done a pretty good job there. So I would like to see him, be at that spot more and just let him focus on that one area instead of moving him around so much. But I think that'll be his job going into the season, unless Ben Cleveland just comes out and blows it out of the water.
Yeah, you can't. I think sometimes people think that because Cleveland was a draft pick, and obviously Greg Roman said that he thought he was one of the best, or maybe even said he was the best guard in the draft, that if you can't give you can't make a comment on him, they think maybe you're being negative, but he literally hasn't played, like you said. And so it's like you kind of have to be neutral. You're not saying that he is this or he isn't that. You just haven't seen it. I mean, I know he's been able to practice at times before his concussion, so there was some practice reps there, but I wasn't there. I wasn't at practice. I didn't get a chance to see that. And he said he hasn't been able to play in the preseason game. So you really can't say one way or the other. And that's not being down on him. It's just we just don't know. And I'm a Phillips fan. I made that known last year. When they drafted him, and I thought the fact that he was able to win a starting role over an experienced veteran like DJ Fluker coming out of the adjusted training camp that they had due to COVID, I think that still spoke highly in terms of how they felt about him. But Carey, let me hit you on this, on the O-line discussion. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm right there with Chris. I believe that Tyree Phillips will be the guy at left guard. And I think for me, what kind of puts me at ease as far as this offensive line, like I know it's going to take some time early on, but we're talking about veterans here with Stanley at left tackle. Maybe you don't look at the center position because he's making that transition. Maybe you don't necessarily look at him like a veteran, but he is. But then you got Kevin Zeitler at right guard, and then you got Villanueva at right tackle. We talking about three guys that understand their position, understand what it takes to prep and get ready. So to have those three guys as that foundation, and to kind of be able to put Phillips in between that infrastructure, obviously it's going to take gelling, but I think they're going to get up to speed, pretty quickly.
Yeah. Now, before we move on for offensive lines, two things I want to get your opinion, both of you guys, your opinion on. We talked about Phillips. We talked about Cleveland. We didn't talk about Ben Powers. Ben Powers got a few starts last year at right guard. Obviously, Bozeman was still at left guard last year, but Ben Powers sort of, I don't have it up in front of me exactly when he kind of got that starting job. It was somewhere around midway, right, through the season, some maybe a little bit before, a little bit after, something like that. But he kind of won that job, I think, once he got in there. And so I'll go to you on him real quick, Chris, before I get to the other thing I wanted to ask you. How does he factor in to that left guard competition for you?
It's hard to say because he's like one of the most Jekyll and Hyde players that you'll see, because one week he'll look terrible and he's damn near spending the whole game on the floor. And then the next week it's like, oh, wow, he's solid. He remembers what he's doing, and, he has an anchor. So with him, it's so up and down. It's a seesaw. But, when he does perform well, it makes you kind of pause as far as putting him on the chopping block, because he's a guy that does have starting experience. So in a pinch, you kind of want to go to that, someone who what they can do, what they can't do, and also has that experience behind them. So in the little rough draft that I did of my 53-man roster, I have him making the team as a backup.
Okay, and I double checked here. Friend of the show at Yoshi 2052 on Twitter. I think everybody who's out there in the Ravens flock. If you don't follow him, you should, because when it comes to anything on analytics and sort of snap counts, participation, I mean, he's doing it like the day of the game, right? And cranking that stuff out like later that night or whatever. So I went back and looked at his chart from 2020, and it looked like Powers came into the Patriots game. He didn't start that game. It looks like he came in. He ended up playing maybe about half the snaps. And then from that game, which I want to say was maybe week 10, week 9, week 10, something like that, from that game until the end of the season, he pretty much was the starter at right guard. So Tennessee, second Steelers game, Dallas, second Browns game, Jags, Giants, and the second Bengals game. And then, of course, the Titans playoff game and the Buffalo play. He basically was the starter at right guard for, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games. So pretty decent sample size that the Ravens, were able to use as an evaluation on him. Carey, let me get your opinion on Ben Powers. How does he factor into that left guard competition for you?
Yeah, it's tough, man. Honestly, I have him out in my projection. When you look at some of the guys, Makari, Phillips, obviously we know what Ben Cleveland showed as far as his college film, but specifically Phillips and Makari, these guys are showing versatility to play at a couple different spots. So when you have that, and then you have this guy that's a little more limited, and then there's too many kind of peaks and valleys in his play. I think that's gonna kind of put him in a tough spot, especially when you're looking to try to figure out what the swing tackle situation is going to look like. That I think that's going to make it even more difficult on him.
Yeah, we know he cannot play tackle. We saw that for sure. That was ugly.
It was an interesting experiment for sure, because obviously we didn't see him play at tackle in any of his prior seasons with the Ravens, not that I can recall. Even going back to 2019, I mean, that's really testing my memory. I don't know if he played any tackle during that preseason or not, but I don't recall seeing that. So when I saw him out there at right tackle, I was like, oh, that's going to be interesting. And yeah, it was rough. It was rough. There's no other way to describe it. It was rough out there. So I'm going to sit the fence. You guys both have kind of taken an initial position. I'm going to sit the fence and say I don't know yet, even though I lean towards maybe him being off in my projection, but it factors into this. So here's the second point I wanted to hit you guys on with the O-line. So there's kind of that uncertainty around the left guard, but backups, right? The backups, that's kind of going to be the next where I think there really is a lot of competition right there, because as people might remember, there was a rule change last year where if you brought 8 offensive linemen up on game day, then you could expand your game day active roster from 53 to 55. But it had to be 8 O-line in order to be able to take advantage of that. And of course, I think Josh showed me, Yoshi, I need to keep that straight. He showed me something where not every team did that. It would seem like a no-brainer. Like every team would bring up 8 so they could get those extra 2 roster spots. But I think he showed me not every team did that, at least not consistently. But the Ravens did. I think the Ravens pretty much did it every week. So you're talking about 8 offensive linemen, right, on game day. So 5 starters and 3 backups. So in terms of that backup competition, and it's not limited to 3 when I say that, I'm just talking about who can be up on game day. Obviously, they can have guys on the practice squad too. And we talked pre-show. I think they had like 10 guys last year where they had 8 kind of on that potential game day active. And then they had 2 guys. 8 plus 2 is 10 on the practice squad. So I'll start with you, Carey, on this one. In terms of that backup role, and this spans any of the positions, right? So you're talking about Ben Bredesen. You're talking about Tristan Colon-Castillo. You're talking about Michael Schofield, who they just brought in earlier this offseason. Some of the UDFAs they have at Foster, and Foster Sorrell and Adrian Ely at tackle. We were talking about Andre Smith, but he actually was released. Terminated his contract. He's a vested veteran, so he wasn't actually waived. So we're kind of looking at that group of and my guy, go get your mans, Craig Mans, who can come get your mans, who's playing some center and playing some guard. So that I think I got all of the guys there who are still in the competition. So like I said, I'll start with you this time, Carey, on that fight for those backup O-line spots. How do you see that kind of shaking out?
Yeah, so for me, on my projection, I have them keeping 9 O-linemen. So as far as the backups, I have Cleveland, Bredesen, Makari, and then I have them keeping the tackle Adrian Ely. I think, we were kind of talking about it when you got a guy with his size and his kind of prerequisite ability. NFL is starving for tackles. That Denzel kind of meme comes to mind. That brother starving. That's the NFL when it comes to like quality tackles. So he's not a guy I see them, putting out there for somebody to pounce on. So those are the guys I feel like they're going to go with, and I got them going with 9. I mean, maybe 10, but they're just so much depth at so many different positions on his team. 10 would be tough. So I kind of split the difference and went with 9 and went with those 4 guys as backups.
I like that. I actually like that group. I wrote it down. I was like, yeah, that's a pretty solid group. What do you think about that, Chris? Now, I guess what I left out, and I should have said, is whoever doesn't win that left guard competition could be, the starter position, could fall into one of these backup roles. So, whether that's Phillips, whether that's Cleveland, whether that's Powers, whoever doesn't win could fall into one of these backup roles if the Ravens choose to keep them on the roster. But so factor that in too with those other guys that I talked about earlier. How do you see those backup spots kind of playing out?
So I have it. I actually have Makari as a swing tackle. I know we spoke about this a few days ago, and it's just Makari. It's just you could tell he's just a natural tackle compared to when he's playing on the inside. When he's on the inside, he just can't sustain those blocks, and he's just not strong enough to deal with those big boys. But when you see him on the edge. Now, granted, he has those short arms, for the long arm truthers, but he can mirror the guys. He can mirror probably better than anyone on the team as far as tackle goes, outside of the actual starters. Because not Cleveland, Phillips can't mirror these edge rushers the way that Makari does. Now he has the length, he has the size, he has the strength, but unfortunately, he just can't mirror them the way that Makari does. That's why I would have him as the swing tackle, because he can play left tackle. He did it at Cal. He can play right tackle. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to go and be your starter and take do what Orlando Brown Jr. did when Ronnie went down and like, all right, you just put him on left tackle, you'll be all right. No, this is break in case of emergency kind of deal, because unfortunately that's just the state of the offensive line. Right now, they don't really have anybody outside of Ely, as Carey said, which is interesting because the clip you posted up a clip, Mike, today of where you show his snaps, and you see the tools there. You see somebody that obviously still raw, but you see those physical tools. A guy with length, a guy that can mirror, a guy that has good footwork. You can see that there's a lump of clay there that could be molded into something that, as far as a developmental tackle goes.
Yeah, and we all three of us have said it would probably be very difficult to get a guy like that, one, through waivers, and if you're fortunate enough to do that, two, to keep him on the practice squad for the entire season. You might be able to start him off there, again, he was an undrafted, rookie free agent. So, when you think about it in terms of that context, and people say, "Oh, why couldn't you get a UDFA through waivers?" Okay, I hear that. Granted, but somebody's going to poach that dude off the practice squad. I mean, that's just how it is. Will Holden, that's a guy whose name I was trying to remember last year, who they had on their practice squad, offensive tackle. No knock on Will Holden, but probably not, a player that a lot of people are thinking about. Oh, we got to keep Will Holden. But he got poached by the Colts because tackles are just they're at such a premium in this league. So I'd be really leery of trying to pull that off with Ely. But something I thought about, a guy who I thought looked better in the Panthers game than the first game, because to your point, Chris, the entire O-line kind of struggled early against the Saints, was Schofield, Michael Schofield. I thought he looked a little bit better. I think he played pretty much the entire second when the twos came in, he pretty much went at left tackle for the rest of the game. And is that right? He was at left tackle. Was it Bredesen at left guard? Or was Bredesen? No, Bredesen was at right guard. Who came in at left guard? I think they had a mix between Foster Sorrell. Foster Sorrell played a lot at left guard, and I think Greg Mance might have got some looks, or maybe he was backup center anyway. Schofield,
Schofield played left tackle from the second to the fourth quarter.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. And, he's a vet, been around, for a couple of years. I think he was drafted by the Broncos as a tackle, played some tackle there to start, but then got moved to guard. So actually played for the Panthers, I think, last year, I believe, or at least was on the Panthers roster. I don't know if he got in any games or not. But he's a guy who has that flexibility to play guard and play tackle. And I think, again, I'm not saying, we're going to get some kind of all-pro level performance, although, hey, who knows? I hope, right? But I think the Ravens really kind of value that flexibility in those backups, like being able to play more than one spot. You talked about that with Makari. I mean, Makari can play three. He can play guard, tackle, and center. And I think you painted the clearest picture I've heard about him from anybody, is that he's built like an interior offensive lineman, but he plays like a tackle. He just looks more natural at tackle, just in terms of his movement ability, but his body type is more like an interior O lineman. So it's kind of a weird distinction there. But so Schofield, where I was going with Schofield is I could see him maybe sticking as one of the backup guys, just again because he gives you that guard tackle versatility. So I think the guys that I had like those backups, I think I had Makari, I had Schofield. I'm trying to remember if I had Ely or not. I think I didn't have Ely because I'm thinking there's going to be some kind of phantom IR situation with phantom injury reserve situation with him. So I think I had Schofield, I had Makari. I want to say I had Cologne Castillo too. And then I might have had a fourth guy. I might have had Sorrell. I can't remember. I think you got to keep either one of Sorrell or Ely. I think you got to find some way to do that. I mean, maybe they can find a way to have both of them, one on the active, one on the practice. But you got two young tackles who, can be developed. I think you got to find a way to keep at least one of those guys, if not both. So we'll see. We'll see how that all shakes out. We got a couple of more weeks here. 2, really, actually, right? Or 3. They play this week, and then I think they have 2 weeks after this third preseason game because we're not getting a fourth. Remember, that's another change this year. Yep. We only have 3 preseason games, not 4. So I think they got like 3 more weeks for all of this to shake out. But anyway, we'll time on that because there's a lot to kind of unpack on the offensive line. But
that's what we call the Cole segment of the show.
Cole Jackson, that's right, at Cole Jackson, NFL on Twitter. Dedicated, we should have had a sponsor like this segment brought to you by Cole Jackson. O-line discussion. That's my guy. Excuse me. So we'll jump around to some of these other positions. One near and dear to all Ravens fans' hearts every year, wide receiver, right? And coming into these preseason games, we're really coming into camp when everybody was coming in healthy. Oh, it was looking good, baby. I mean, Hollywood, Bateman, Sammy Watkins. You had, guys, as you're like your fourth, like Devin Duvernay, Miles Boykin, like your fourth or your fifth, you Prochet, Tyler Wallace, who they drafted, you're looking like, man, we about to cook. And then the hamstring started going. Hamstring started going down like dominoes, one after another. And we really haven't had a chance to see those guys in any of the preseason games. Those first three guys that I mentioned. Obviously, we've seen Duvernay, we've seen Prochet, we've seen Tyler Wallace. We'll get to him. Jalen Moore, a little bit of Benjamin Victor. I always want to call him Victor. Benjamin Victor. I have to like pause and catch myself.
I do the same thing.
I want to say Victor, but I don't know why. I don't know why I want to say that. And then we've even seen some other guys. Man, who's the guy from Cincinnati? Gray. Last name is Gray. He got a little bit of run.
Oh, about number 15?
Yeah. Michael Darius, who I think got released actually yesterday. He got a little run in that Panthers game. So I'll start with you, Carey, on the wide receivers. Obviously, I think we all kind of know who the top, I'd say at least the top four. You can let me know if you disagree. I mean, obviously the top three, I think we all agree on. I think Duvernay is the fourth. And then I think where it starts to get interesting is the fifth, the sixth, and for those who think that they might keep the seventh wide receiver spot. There's a little bit of a decision to be made there. Do you keep six or do you keep seven? But I think that's where it starts to get interesting at 5, 6, and possibly 7. So, Carey, what do you think about those roster spots after those top four? Or if you agree with me on the fourth, I think we're probably on the same page with the three. But do you even think Duvernay is the fourth?
Yeah, I definitely got Duvernay as the fourth. What was kind of interesting to me going into this, this is like before training camp, anything, when everybody was trying to figure out whether the Ravens were going to keep 6 receivers, whether they were going to keep 7. I was looking at the depth on the team, and I'm thinking if everybody comes through healthy, maybe they only keep 5. With Marquise, Rashard Bateman, Watkins, Duvernay, and Tylan Wallace, and maybe that saves you a spot. I think you have some versatility, some talent there, throughout those 5 guys. But then we get to camp, and Prochet just, he looks good. He looks versatile. You say he doesn't have any juice, which I mean, it's really true. It's true. He's not going to run away from anybody, but he's a guy that can back up at all 3 spots, gives you the return ability as well. And, people just seem to be raving about him. So, to me, he pushes himself into that conversation to be that 6th wide receiver. But my biggest takeaway is just, even with the injuries, like if we're saying that Bateman is going to miss time early, even if I'm not so much worried about Hollywood, but even if we're saying, hey, Hollywood is going to miss some time early on in the season, I think if you look at the 3 wide receiver set that they roll out, it's still better than last year's 3 wide receiver set. So, that's maybe kind of sad to say. I don't know how much that is impressive as it is kind of sad as for the level from last year's roster. But I'm it's been a lot of doom and gloom surrounding this wide receiver position as far as the injuries over the last couple of days. But I'm looking at it like, man, this is a talented group, man. And, Tylan Wallace took a step forward in that last preseason game. I'm looking forward to what he can do. He's ready to start hitting the ground running and start making plays. So, I'm still very encouraged by this group, even with the injuries.
Yeah, I should probably take some heat for saying Prochet doesn't have any juice. I mean, all the guy does, by all reports, is just work his butt off, right? You consistently hear he's always the first guy out in practice, out early on the jugs machine, catching passes. Pretty much all the practice reports he's making plays pretty much every day. I think the joint practice is down in Carolina, at least one of those days, maybe both. One of those days, they said he was just making plays all over the place and couldn't be covered. So you probably want to listen to the people who are there covering the team and reporting on it, as opposed to me. But Chris, so let me go to you on the wide receivers. And for you, I really feel like we only need to talk about one, and that's Tyler Wallace. Like, we don't even need to talk about any other wide receivers because they don't really exist. There's other wide receivers, right? That's a category, and there's Tyler Wallace.
And then there's Tyler Wallace. That's right.
And that's just how it goes. But seriously, I assume are you in the same place with those top four? You got Duvernay kind of as your fourth guy.
Oh yeah, 100%. He's definitely has that 4 spot locked down. I would say I'll round it out and say Prochet has probably earned himself that 5th spot, and Tyler Wallace as well, to round out that group. Unfortunately, I know this is a hard one for Mike. It's a hard one for me. But Miles Boykin era might be over, as unfortunate it is to say. We were both very high on him coming out of Notre Dame. But like we said with Ben Cleveland, you can't, if you're not on the field, you can't show what you could do. And this year, more than any, Boykin needed to be on the field because it's a crowded room. This is not 2019. This is not 2020. This is a wide receiver room that has a lot of talent on it now. And unfortunately for him, he didn't have a chance to show anything, really. And when he was there early in training camp, the reports were not good because he was dropping balls and not performing, to the best of his ability. So, pour one out for our boy Miles Boykin.
It could definitely be a end of the road, boys to men situation for my guy. I might have to tweet out the GIF. We may have come to the end of the road. But you to your point about how important the competition and him showing well was this year as compared to other years. We heard Marlon Humphrey talk about that early in camp, and he wasn't throwing shade at any of the guys that were here in previous years, but he just said, in previous years we had like the top 2, maybe 3 guys, right, and then the rest. But now he's like, we've got like a top 5, a top 6, in the wide receiver group, and they can all play, they can all ball. So it's just one thing that he noticed just in terms of the quality of the talent and also the coaching. Right, he talked about Keith Williams and T. Martin were doing, and how he's just like, man, they're over there looking like DBs. They got the swag. Different kind of drills going on that I haven't seen in previous years. So you can tell that there's a different vibe around that wide receiver group this year. And unfortunately for me, as a fan of the run game and all things run blocking, Miles Boykin, heck of a run blocker. But as you and I were talking earlier, Tyler Wallace, man, that dude was doing work as a blocker in that Panthers game, because there was a run play that the Ravens were running pretty consistently. Even one of the Panthers linebackers, he did a sideline interview during the game, and he was out of the game at that point because he's a starter. But he was talking to the 2s and the 3s coming off the field. And he's like, they're running the same play. It's the same play. It's power, and they're motioning the Z receiver down, and he's cracking on a safety or a linebacker. And that oftentimes that Z receiver was Tyler Wallace, and he was going in there just digging dudes out. So, I guess that was always the thing for me, is like, yeah, obviously I had that affinity for Miles Boykin because of that role, but I just had an affinity for the role, as opposed to the position. I just need somebody who can come in and do that role. And I think Tyler Wallace not only gives you that, obviously he doesn't have the same size. I mean, they don't have many 6'4", 220-pound receivers on the roster. So that had always kind of been the thing that really kind of set Boykin apart. But what you do have in Wallace is just a dog mentality, right? Just go in there and battle with people. And then we saw he had a couple catches in that game too. One on like a little quick out, which was a really good adjustment to the ball because Hundley was out there throwing heaters. There wasn't no touch throws out there. He was throwing straight heaters, and that one was kind of off Tylen's body, so he had to adjust and kind of snag it in and get both feet in. And then the one where he caught a little stop route, broke a tackle, spun out a little curl, maybe broke out of it. I thought for sure he was going to score on that because that's what we saw that in college too. Another friend of the show, Matt Waldman of the RSP rookie scouting portfolio. Let me get it out properly. He had talked about Tylan Wallace and his speed, right, before he had that injury. And I think we got to see just a little bit of that because, he was running away from that one dude that he broke the tackle on. And, somebody kind of came from over the top to kind of take him down. But we saw the little high step, as he was trying to get in that end zone. So you have a guy that can come in and give you something in the run game in terms of a blocker, but then also can be a playmaker as a receiver, which is kind of the thing that, quite honestly, he's my boy, but quite honestly, that's been lacking with Boykin. We didn't really have that playmaking, at the receiver spot as much. You get somebody who can do both of those things, that's an upgrade. I don't think there's any other way to look at it. So, yeah, bummer for him if that's the way that it works out, but you can't keep them all. That's the thing I keep telling myself as I look at the roster and start thinking about, 53 practice squad. Can't keep everybody.
I wonder if they IR Boykin and just keep him on the roster. Well, keep him on IR and just have him on ice until maybe he's healthy. And you never know with these injuries. We already got a bunch of them, and maybe bring him back in the capacity like that.
Yeah, you've got you can do that in an unlimited capacity this year. Mm-hmm. Remember, it used to be a certain number of guys you could do that. Now you can do that with as many as you want. Yeah. But I think it's only for 3 weeks. And I think after 3 weeks, then, they come back and they start practicing and you can make a decision, in terms of the roster. But I think what that could allow you to do is be a little more creative. It might be a little bit more kind of a musical chairs, 3-car Monty kind of situation where you can say, well, let's put this guy on IR. And then, when he's 2 days away from the end of his 3rd week, let's go ahead and release him and then put this other guy on IR and let him get 3 weeks.
And it could be on the table because we know, Sammy Watkins, his injury history, it's always been a little bit shaky. And, Hollywood has this hamstring injury. Like Carey said, I'm not too worried about it, but you never know with these hamstrings. They could linger too. And then, we got Bateman coming back from his surgery, maybe September, maybe October. So maybe it's something that'll be on the table.
Yeah, and we talked about how offensive tackle depth is at a premium in this league. Different story with wide receiver. A lot of wide receivers out there, and so if you've got a guy who maybe isn't going to make your 53, but I guess because I think I'm only thinking this way because he's been a starter from the beginning. I've just never even envisioned this, but maybe he could be on the practice squad. Maybe he could be a practice squad guy, and you don't have to necessarily worry about somebody poaching him. I kind of feel like somebody would come and get him. A guy who has been a starter. Okay, yeah, he hasn't put up huge receiving numbers or whatever, but he's been a starter his first 2 years. Yeah, 19, and 20. Yeah, 2 years.
There's always going to be somebody that'll say, I was a fan of his when he was in Notre Dame, and I know how to use him.
Always
going to be one of those.
Yeah, that's the one thing. You talk about players and people talk about, all the players in the NFL being alpha males. Coaches really aren't that different in the NFL. They all got egos too, and they all feel like, like you just said, Chris, I know this guy didn't do X, Y, and Z as previous team. That's because I wasn't coaching. Mm-hmm. When I'm coaching him, then you're going to see me get, everything out of him. So I think they always believe that. And that's good to some extent. I think you need that, or, you probably wouldn't be coaching at that level. But sometimes it can be, a little humorous. Sometimes not reality. But I think you kind of got to carry it that way. And that's probably what got you there. All right, so we'll keep jumping around here. This one will be real quick because I think I'm going to touch on quarterback, and then I want to go to defensive back, and I think that's a longer conversation. I think we're all, the three of us are in agreement that we've seen enough, not just in this preseason, but even going back to the times that he played last year. I think he got in against the Bengals, and obviously he got in the Bills game when Lamar went out with a concussion. I think we're all in agreement that Tyler Huntley is the backup quarterback at this point. Anybody disagree with that?
No way. It's his job.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was his job when Trace was healthy. I still thought it was Huntley's job.
Yeah, I think we keep that one short and sweet. And, no disrespect to anybody, but if anybody out there thinks that he's not, hey, tweet at us, send your comments in, and I'll probably reply back to you with the Tyler Huntley, they look like some poo-poo gif. So that's how strongly I feel about it. But anyway, let's move on to this defensive back conversation, because kind of like the offensive line, well, not the offensive line. It's more like the wide receiver group, in that who kind of the top 4, maybe even 5 are. Those are locks. You know that. But then it gets interesting after that. And I'm lumping all these guys together, and we can kind of carve out safety versus cornerback as we go. But I'm just saying DBs because, again, back in my day, nobody wants to hear about me as a slow, non-athletic cornerback. But that's kind of how I was taught. You're a DB, not a corner. You're not a safety. You can play anywhere, do anything. Just tell me where to go, where to line up, and I'll play it. I'm a DB. That's it. So I know these guys are the locks, clearly. Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, Jimmy Smith, Tavon Young. I think Anthony Averett is a lock. There might be some people who say, I think he's on the roster, but I don't know if I'd say lock. I think it's a lock. So what was that? 5 guys. And then I think it gets interesting after that, right? Now you're getting into, and maybe this is where we should carve it out, because I guess I did just name corners. Then you're looking at Chris Westry, Sean Wade. I don't really know what to do with Brandon Stevens. He's played nickel. He's played some safety. You can go either way in that discussion. But I think some of the injuries has helped clear some of that up at the cornerback spot, because obviously they let Devontae Harris go. Mom Marshall they put on IR. Really feel bad for him. I mean, this guy's been on IR his entire time in the NFL, seems like. And then Khalil Dorsey. I don't know if Khalil Dorsey was released or is on IR. I'm not sure where Khalil. I know he's hurt or was hurt, but I'm not kind of sure what his status is at the moment. But anyway, start with you, Carey. The corners, and I guess we're really talking about those reserve spots. How do you see that going?
So I have them keeping 6, and you named out the 5 guys. I agree, all of them are locks, and I have them keeping Sean Wade as that 6th corner. But man, this is a situation where I find room on this roster. Like, can we go with 5 defensive linemen? Can we do creative things? It's just like that FOMO, man, that fear of missing out. You got Westry, a 6'4" boundary corner who looks the part. Then you talk about all these safeties we're going to get to. Like, I know we can't keep all these guys. I legitimately want to keep all these guys. Like, it's just so much talent and so much versatility. And, these are guys that if they don't make this roster, they're going to make other rosters, and they're going to be playing on Sundays for these teams. These are sub-package players at minimum, a lot of these guys. So, maybe there's a trade out there. I know the last couple of days they've been a lot of, corners for conditional 7th-round picks. Maybe there's a situation where, maybe they can get some value trade or something like that, but there's just a lot of value on being this secondary.
I'm with you, man. I want to keep them all. I don't want to cut anybody. because I think all of these guys are talented. So it's a really, really tough decision. But Chris, let me go to you. And this is probably where we have a little bit of discussion because I think you're probably on the same page with Carey on those top 5 guys. But I think you had Westry on as opposed to Shaun Wade.
I did only because
it's a projection. Again, I want to remind the people this is initial. This is not Chris's final.
This is the rough draft.
Yeah.
So basically, the only reason is because a lot of the things that Shaun Wade does well, Brandon Stevens does well, and he might do at a higher level. But I'm not saying like this isn't my case to cut Shaun Wade. Like I want to make that very clear. I don't want to cut Shaun Wade, but I see a lot of potential in Chris Westry. You know, I see a guy who, you know, he's out there moving like a damn gazelle at 6'4", and you know he was. I mean, I know Terrace Marshall got that big catch on him the other night, but he was right there. You know, and this is a second-year guy going up against. Marshall was a second-round pick, right?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think he was
a second-round pick,
first,
but he could have easily been a first-round pick, and he was there with him stride for stride. You know, and that's what you want to see. And you know, I know just from a usage standpoint, Westry's been running, you know, more with the second group that comes in, the second unit that comes in, and then Shaun Wade is playing way later on in the fourth quarter. And I know usage isn't everything, but that does say something where the team wants to see more out of, you know, Chris Westry and see him go up against a higher talent level than the guys that he'll see in the second half. So that's the only reason why I went with Westry, but I do want to find a spot for Shaun Wade because I don't like it would be a wasted draft pick. And 2, I like Shaun Wade. I think Shaun Wade is a good nickelback. I think he can do really well in that spot. And he's a versatile guy that you can move around. You know, you can move him at safety some. You could move him in the slot. You could even throw him outside. I wouldn't, you know, do that too often. But I do like Shaun Wade, though. But it's difficult. It's going to be a very difficult decision.
Yeah, we talked about this before, and I had Wade on, and if I had to make the choice between those two, I would have Westry off and probably trying to get him on through the practice squad, which may be difficult now, not just because of his size and speed combination, but there's more tape on him now. If you go back to 2019, he's a UDFA coming out of Kentucky, signed with the Cowboys, played in a couple of their preseason games. Let me back up. First, in 2019, he had a hamstring injury, so they put him in IR. Comes back in, after playing in some of those preseason games in 2019, goes on IR. Comes back in 2020, doesn't really get in any games in 2020. They called him up for I think their week 14 and week 15 games. Called him up from the practice squad, but didn't actually get on the field. Kind of was just there, kind of that reserve corner kind of role. And then at the end of the season, his practice squad contract, terminated. And within like 8 days, the Ravens signed him to a reserve futures contract. So I think at that point, if you were going back to, if we were looking at it at that point in time where all you had was those preseason games on tape from 2019, you might feel a little bit better about being able to get him through the practice squad. But now that he's played in these preseason game, these first 2 preseason games of 2021, and like you said, yeah, he gave up the catch to Marshall, but you could see him making a play for that ball, and he just missed it. I mean, literally just missed being able to get his hand in there and maybe break that up. And then we saw in the first game the tip on a long ball that led to one of the Geno Stone interceptions. And, generally he's just had pretty tight coverage, I think, even when he hasn't been targeted. So might be a little tougher now to get that guy through to the practice squad if you try to do that. Maybe you think you can do that with Shaun Wade because, again, he doesn't have that much tape on him either, but he's a 5th-round pick, and he's got all of that tape from Ohio State. This is recent, right? It was just from this draft, and so obviously there were a lot of people. I mean, you can go back to the prior year where people were projecting him to go in the first round, right? When he was playing in the slot, 2 years ago. And then when he moved outside last year, had a little bit, of a rockier, time with it. And so he slipped, obviously, in the draft. So I don't know. I don't think you can probably run that risk either. I think you're probably going to have to make a decision between those two if you decide to only keep one of them. If you want to go, what do we say? Those first 5, that would be 6 and 7. I don't know if they've kept 7 corners before. I mean, I'd have to go back and check that. But that we talked about all of the number crunches at the other positions. I mean, if you do that, it's gonna hurt you somewhere else. Let's jump over to safety because we got some names over here that are also near and dear to our hearts. So we know about Chuck Clark. We know about Deshaun Elliott, who is already kind of living up to, what I was expecting. I kind of was putting that out there this offseason after looking at some of the tape from last year. I was like, look, this dude was so close to making so many more plays on the ball last year, like just missing forced fumbles, interceptions, was just there though, and just missing it. And we're starting to see in some of these preseason games, he's getting ready to take that step, in my opinion. Even before the preseason, I thought 2021, he was going to show out, and I still think that's going to happen. So we know about Clark, we know about Elliott, and I think it Brandon Stevens, I think is pretty safe. I'm putting him in the safety category for the purpose of this discussion, even though he's played some nickel in some of the preseason games, but he was a 3rd round pick, so pretty safe to say he's on the team. So you got those 3 guys. Then I think it gets interesting after that. I mean, we all love CoCap. We all love Anthony Levine. But, these young guys are pushing, man. Geno Stone, Nigel Warrior, Ardarius Washington, they've all played in these preseason games, and they've all made plays in these preseason games. So they're really pushing to be on this roster. So, Chris, let me go to you. What do you think about this safety competition, particularly with those reserve guys? Like I said, I think we're pretty set with Chuck Clark and Deshaun Elliott as the starters. And then after that, Brandon Stevens, I should say, after those 3, it gets a little dicey.
Yeah, this one, I'm not going to be jealous of, the decision that these guys are going to have to make, because there's going to be a couple talented guys that are going to be out there and that they're going to have to let go, because, obviously we got CoCap there, who's been the glue for the special teams unit for over a decade now. So you have him, and you have his leadership and the presence, and how much they value special teams. And then we got Geno Stone, who's a guy that we spoke about last year after the draft. And he's come in, and all the reports have said he's in way better shape. And all you have to do is just turn the TV on and you see it. He looks like an actual NFL safety now. He's all muscled up now. He's a little quicker twitch than he was over at Iowa. So right now it's looking like he might have a spot on this team. And then Nigel Warrior was out with an injury, and it was looking bleak for him. And then he just comes in and balls out against Carolina like he wasn't even injured, and he's been there the whole time. So he makes things difficult. And then little Ardarius Washington, he's just making plays left and right on the field in the preseason games. So what I have it currently, I have them keeping CoCap, and I have them keeping Geno Stone. Unfortunately, I have them cutting Washington and Nigel Warrior. Those are the 2 cuts that I have from the safety group.
Those are painful. I'm just going to let you know.
Very, because Nigel Warrior is my guy.
I know.
That's my guy, man. But I don't know. It's difficult, man. I don't know. Maybe he could be the nickelback. Who knows? Maybe we put him in that CB conversation.
Yeah, they obviously wanted to get a look at him at cornerback. He's pretty much been, he was injured and didn't get a chance to play in the Saints game. He played in the Panthers game and played exclusively at cornerback, outside corner too, in the Saints game. Geno Stone, you're right. You can just see it when you're looking at him on the screen. He must be on that dirty 30, that LaRon Landry plan from back in the day, because dude is swole now. But Carey, let me go to you on these safeties, man. How do you see this playing out?
Yeah, I got it pretty much the same way Chris has it, and that's what makes it so difficult. That's when this position specifically is where I start thinking about where I want to try to save a roster spot. Because with Nigel Warrior and with our Darius Washington, with those two guys, it'd be one thing if they were just one position guys, like if they were just a center field player or just the in the box player at safety, that'd be one thing. But like you said, they got Nigel Warrior playing outside corner. We know he can play in the slot. They can come up in the box. They can play so many different roles. Both of these guys, that just makes it so much more difficult of a decision to make, because you got guys that can make you know so many different things work for you from a package perspective. When you're getting into your dime package and trying to do some, they can give you a lot of different looks. So I'm not looking forward to seeing one of those guys' names on that list when cut down day comes, man. But I'm trying to prepare myself and light my candles and get into a peaceful zen.
It's going to be so tough, man, because all of those dudes have made plays. They haven't just been out there. We talked about Geno Stone with the 2 interceptions in the Saints game. Darius Washington had a couple of PBUs. He's had special team tackles. Nigel Warrior in that Panthers game, he was coming up making tackles in the run game, tackles in the screen game. He had a PBU on a 3rd down play that got the Panthers off the field. So, I mean, these guys just ain't out there and not being involved, not getting targeted, not getting involved in the run game. They've been making things happen. So it's going to be a real tough decision on those guys. I can't even call it at this point. I want to keep all 3. But I'm not gonna. I already was talking reckless about James Prochet. I'm not gonna sit up here. I'm not going to sit up here and say and be the one who says, they need to cut CoCap. I'm not going to do that. That's not going to happen. So, I think the only other kind of position group I thought we could touch on, outside linebacker, because another group where they're kind of deep. And I heard something earlier today. I give him, well, I don't know. I heard it early. Let me leave it at that because of how it happened. But you've got obviously the 2 draft picks, right? Got Odafe Oweh, 1st round pick. Dalen Hayes, a little bit later round pick. I think Dalen was a 5th rounder, right? Was he in the 5th? Yeah. But man, he's looked good. He's looked good in both of the games as a rusher, dropping into coverage in the run game. He doesn't look like a rookie. He doesn't look like a rookie to me. Obviously, Pernell McPhee is there. We know what he is, what he means to this team. Jalen Ferguson, who's come in good shape and is kind of asserting himself in the run game and like the little engine that could, doing a little bit more in the pass game, in terms of pass rush, a little bit more. And then Tyus Bowser, who, another friend of the show, Denard Melton at the Fire Zone show, thinks is going to be a star, thinks this is a breakout season for Tyus Bowser. So a lot of guys in that room. Did I just name 6 guys? Was that 6? I think I named 6 guys. Oh, and Justin Houston. How could I forget Justin Houston, who they signed not too long ago. So, yeah, I think that's 6 guys. Are they going to keep 6 outside linebackers? I think they did last year at various points. They may have even had I'd have to go back and look at Yoshi's charting to see if they had games where all 6 were active. They certainly had games where 5 were active. Might even had some where all 6. I'll start with you, Carey. Do you think they keep 6 outside linebackers? And if not, what do you see happening?
Yeah, I think they keep 6. And probably wouldn't have said that a few weeks ago. I kind of thought that maybe Ferguson would be the odd man out, but he stepped it up. I think he stepped up his play, and I think he's um, you know forcing that to be a more difficult decision. So I think they keep six. I think the interesting thing is when you look at how they're constructed and you look at specifically Pernell McPhee and Destin Houston and those guys being able to kick inside or down, I think you can almost look at them like quasi linemen that maybe allow you to maybe keep one less lineman. Um, it kind of just depends on what they can find out there on the wire, or kind of what they want to do as far as depth on the practice squad. But I think that's an interesting thing because I don't know. I'm just people. I just want to hoard good players, so I don't want to keep a lesser player at a spot. Just because you want to have this prerequisite amount of whatever the position is. So I do think they keep six. I think it's going to take some creativity, to make sure they can do that. But I think in the end they'll do that.
Yeah, so I double checked. I went back and looked at Yoshi's charting. They did not have a game last year where they had 6 outside linebackers active, so I was wrong about that. They did have some games where they had 5. The first 6 games, they basically only had 4 who got snaps, but that was before they traded for Yannick. When they traded for Yannick, that first Pittsburgh game, for the next 4 games, they had 5 guys get snaps. So they've supported 5 outside linebackers getting snaps in games, multiple games. It wasn't just like a 1-game thing. So I could see that happening, but did not have 6 active on game day. I don't think the chart I'm looking at now just shows snap counts. It doesn't necessarily show whether somebody was no, it does show inactives. Yeah, so I don't know if they had 6. But anyway, let me not go down that hole. Chris, what do you think about this outside linebacker position? They keep all 6. They keep less than 6. What do you think?
So I have them keeping 6. Like Carey said, it's a philosophical standpoint. It's like don't keep lesser players just to stick to this. Oh, we have to have X amount of players at this position. It's like that will go against what they do even in the draft. They don't ever say, "Oh, we need a wide receiver." Let's say, well, they have done it, but it hasn't worked out for them. But generally speaking, they don't say, "Oh, we need a wide receiver. Let's go for this wide receiver over this edge rusher that we have rated way higher." So I think about it in that same vein. It's like, if these guys are talented, let's not let them go, because we've seen that bite them in the ass before. Let's keep these talented guys, because like you said, football has 100% injury rate. Guys are going to get hurt. A lot of these guys are older. A lot of these guys are young. So the learning curve, I mean, they look good now, but they might hit the rookie wall. Things might happen. It's like Ray Lewis used to say, there's peaks and valleys in the NFL season. So you just need guys, and you got to have them stay fresh. And if they're all talented, keep them. Keep them. That's what I have it right now. I have it Justin Houston. I have Owe. I have Bowser. I have Hayes. You guys have McPhee as a outside linebacker, or you have him somewhere else?
He's one of those guys that when Carey mentioned about being able to kick inside, he's definitely that first guy that comes to mind. But I think I had him listed as an outside linebacker.
Yeah, that's what I have him as an outside linebacker. Now, where things get a little tricky for me, and I think my bias shows, is Jalen Ferguson. I currently don't have him on this roster, but to Carey's point, he has been doing his thing this preseason as far as the games are concerned. And I was not a Ferguson fan. I could admit my bias, but what I've seen from him this year, he seems more comfortable. He's actually playing with emotion which is, that shows you that a player's getting comfortable when they start playing with emotion and they're free out there. They're not just, like a robot or scared to make a mistake. And he's out there, having fun. And that's what you want to see. So that's another guy that it was like, damn, how could I leave him off? He's doing what he needs to do in order to make the team. So that was another one that was tough for me. But I left him off. But I wouldn't be mad if he's on the final 53.
Nice little segue there. With mentioning Ferguson, I'm doing a video next day or two, might be out Friday, with Denard Melton on Ferguson and how he played in that Panthers game. So we're gonna have some film, hopefully. If YouTube copyright police don't hit us, this is the thing without the all 22. Whenever I was doing film breakdowns, in the DCP lab or whatever, I was always using the coach's film, and YouTube didn't hit you for that. They didn't pop you for that. But when you use the broadcast, clips, and particularly any kind of highlight clips from the NFL, they popping you up, down, and all around for copyright claims. So we'll see how it goes. I hope we can get some of it in there. Well, somebody told me what you can do, and it was like a no-brainer, but it was a really good idea. They said, hey, if they flag you for some of those, and what happens when they flag you for those is you just have to trim them out of the video, and they actually do it for you. You just click, they show you all the segments that they say have copyright claims, and you just click trim, and they just trim it right out of the video for you. But then there's like these lapses in the video, right? And somebody said, well, hey, just take all of the clips and just tweet them out, right? You can do it through Twitter, and you should be good. So that way people can go both. If we don't get caught, then you can watch it in the YouTube video. If we do get caught, then you can go to Twitter and you can see the plays there. But
I was the one who said that.
Oh, well, there you see, I was someone. It's Chris. Let me give credit where credit is due. That was so I even downplayed it. It was an excellent idea. But you'll see some plays there, and I don't have a ton of them. I think I got like maybe 6 or 7 clips, but you'll see some plays there where, like you said, Chris, he looks very comfortable, and it looks like he's kind of finding his role, finding where he fits in this defense. He's looked much better against the run in terms of setting the edge, and I show a couple of those plays. Damn near had a sack. He beat their backup left tackle, little speed rush, little dip and rip at the top of the rush. Literally gets his hand around, I think it was Will Greer was their quarterback's ankle, and tries to pull him down that way, but Greer kind of steps out of it. So, almost had a sack there. And then, special teams being near and dear to my heart, he had a couple of punt rushes on punt return, right? So the Panthers are punting to the Ravens returning, where it had to be intentional what he was coached to do. He literally destroyed the long snapper. He picked him up and put him on his back, right? Did it on 2 different punt rushes. Like, not just trying, to rush the guy, not just getting into his chest and trying to drive, like literally picking him up and slamming him on the ground. And the second time, he actually drew a holding call on the guy, because the guy was like, man, this dude is straight running me over. I have to hold on to him, or he's going to make a beeline for the punter. So, that's always near and dear to my heart whenever guys show up on special teams like that. So we'll put some of those out there for people to take a look at. Like I said, hopefully we'll get it out Friday. Definitely want to get it out before the last game on Saturday. And with that, let me transition into that, because we also want to talk a little fantasy and, kind of give Chris and Carey the floor to do that. But just to kind of put a button on this and wrap this up, we also want to, talk a little bit about our expectations going into this last and final preseason game. Remember, there's only 3 this year. But I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to LJ Fort. Unfortunately, tore his ACL in that Panthers game and is out for the season. Just been a really solid guy at inside linebacker ever since they signed him. He's one of those guys who I've always wondered, like, since the Ravens brought him in, I'm like, how is this guy not playing more on other teams? He had been with the Steelers. He had been with the Eagles, kind of bounced around a little bit. And every time he's on the field, he's just solid. He's just solid, in the right place, doing the right thing. knowing the defense, communicating, and it just sucks to see because he was only in for one play. The one play he came in for was the play he tore his ACL.
Man.
So it just sucks to see that happen. But in football, there's always the next man up line, and as one door closes, another opens. So I just mentioned special teams a minute ago. A guy who's played pretty well for them has caught my eye on special teams over the last year. So it was Christian Welch, linebacker out of Iowa. So it's going to open the door for a guy like him to see some more run. Obviously, Chris Board is there as one of the other backup inside linebackers, and he already kind of carved out a little role for himself last year, kind of one of their sub package inside linebackers. And of course, we know Patrick Queen and Malik Harrison are kind of slated to start there. So just wanted to give a shout out there to LJ Fort and wishing him a speedy recovery and hope he can get back next year and continue to play. But now moving into this last game against the Washington football team, we wanted to talk about just real quickly, and then we'll go into fantasy, our expectations. I'll go first this time just to get mine out of the way because I really only have one. And then I'll turn it over to you guys to hear my expectation is to not see Lamar Jackson play. I would really hope that we don't see him. I don't need to see him in any of these preseason games. And I'm not just saying that because of what we said about the offensive line. And obviously people probably know that the football team down there in DC has a pretty good defensive line. Everybody knows Chase Young. They've got the interior defensive tackles. They've got Montez Sweat. So they got some legit dudes up front there. But I just don't see what the point would be. Not just because of the O-line. The starting wide receivers we talked about, they're still not going to be in that game, I don't think. We still got a couple of days before the game, so maybe that changes. But I don't think those guys are going to go in that game. And so I just don't see what the point would be to play Lamar in that game. But anyway, let me start with you, Chris. What are your expectations for that final preseason game?
I just want to see these end of the roster guys because, we just spoke about it and we're all having a tough time trimming this roster down and who are they going to keep, who are they not going to keep. I want to see, these safeties. I want to see these cornerbacks, the end of the roster guys. That's what I'm most interested in seeing. And obviously the offensive line too. The offensive line, that's going to be major. I'll be surprised if Ronnie Stanley played. So I don't think we'll see him. But I'm hoping we'll see that same starting five that we saw in Carolina with Makari at left tackle, Phillips at left guard, Bozeman at center, Zeitler at right guard, and Villanueva at right tackle. So that's mostly what I'm looking forward to, though, those end of the roster battles.
Carey, what about you? What are you looking for going into that last game?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Lamar Jackson not seeing Chase Young in any sense. Like, I'll tap him up after the game for him to touch Lamar at all. Definitely share your sentiments there. Other than that, a couple guys I'm looking at. Tyson Williams, I want to see him kind of close out the preseason strong and continue to try to make that push to be on the roster. He's a guy that Matt Wallman kind of brought to my attention when the Ravens signed him as an undrafted free last year. And kind of just looking at his tape on BYU, you just saw a big physical back who had nimble feet that can catch the ball, that, can pass protect. And, last year he showed some things, but this year, you can tell he's further removed from the ACL injury. So you see a little bit more burst, but, that nimble feet, man, and those natural hands, man. I mean, the guy just, he's a good player. Like, I don't want to put, go too far with my purple glasses, but he would easily, to me, be the number 2 running back, for the Falcons or for the Rams right now. I think he's level of player. I think he's worthy of carries on Sunday. So looking forward to seeing him, kind of close out a strong preseason. And then Tylen Wallace, I want to see him get involved early in this preseason game, get some targets and see if he can keep his upward momentum going. So those two guys specifically are there.
You make a good point. I don't think we talked about the running backs. I'm glad that you mentioned them because, you hear people talk about players flashing. I mean, just that should be a picture. That should be the definition of what Tylen Wallace. I'm sorry, Tylen Wallace is flash too. Taysom Williams. That should be the definition of what he's done this preseason because that guy has been out there putting it all on display. I mean, vision, patience, agility, quickness, speed, power. He's been solid in pass pro. He had a snap against the Panthers where they lined him up out wide and threw him like a little quick stop route, on a little quick hitch on the sideline. He's been catching the ball out of the backfield. I mean, he's put it all on display. And you mentioned Matt Waldman. We talked about him earlier. Obviously, big friend of the show, brother from another mother. He talked about Williams, as he was coming out that year into the draft and said, this is a guy that people need to be talking more about. And you can see why. I mean, he had a touchdown run against the Panthers. It was just, incredible. I mean, just effort, balance, cutting on a dime on guys, just everything was there. So that guy's been really, really impressive in the preseason. And then their other running back, Nate McCrary, also had a strong game against the Panthers. Played well against the Saints too, but kind of stacked that with another strong game against the Saints. And when he gets going north and south, I mean that dude is a load when that dude gets his pads.
And imagine how he's going to play when they give him a running back number too. That's going to take him to a next level.
Yeah, he's rocking that 18 right now. Tyson Williams rocking the number of another Williams who played for the Ravens, Ricky Williams. And what's crazy is like when you look at them just physically, so Nate McCrary is listed at 213, right? He's listed at 213 pounds, 6 foot, 213 pounds, and Tyson is listed at 6 foot 220. Now, who looks bigger to you? Not necessarily taller, but just like bigger to you between the. I mean, McCrary is like a load, but I guess they just carry it differently. Yeah. And man, both of those guys have been impressive. And then, that might put another one of my guys, Justice Hill. We talked about Miles Boykin. Man, this is a rough one for me. This show, Justice might be another one we have to pour one out for because, he got to play in that Saints game. And then, he suffered an injury and he hasn't been able to practice and he didn't play obviously against the Panthers. And these guys are not staying static, right? They're continuing to push and advance and make their claims to be on this roster. So right now, for me, I don't know that I could have Tyson Williams off this roster. I don't see how I could do it. I think he's got to be on.
I'm with you.
I don't know how you numbers wise, how you make that work. Cause obviously you got JK and Gus as your starters. Ricard, I mean, he's not a running back, but he's a fullback. But if you're just putting, in that back room, that's three guys. And then, you're going to have a fourth guy. I think you have to. I think you got to have Tyson on there just based on how he's played through these two preseason games and, the reports that we've heard out of practice basically echoing, saying, look, he's doing the same things in practice that he's doing in these games. So, and then maybe you get McCrary on the practice squad because I don't want to let him go either. Because, this situation kind of reminds me of, what was it, 2018, where they brought in a couple of those UDFA. That's the year that they brought Gus in. Gus was one of the UDFAs, and they had like two other guys who was UDFAs too. And they were kind of all battling it out, and Gus, kind of won that competition. So kind of reminds me of that situation where you bring these UDFA guys in. And Ravens have done pretty well with UDFA running backs over the last, couple of years. So I know I said I wasn't going to go too much further on that, but once Carey mentioned Tyson,
that was my
we got to talk about him.
Yeah, that was my exact thought when I first when Matt Woodman mentioned him, and after the Ravens signed him, I went back and watched him at BYU, and my first thought was, this could be Gus Edwards all over again. Now I was thinking Gus Edwards would probably, sign a more lucrative deal elsewhere, and so maybe, the natural progression is he leaves in free agency, and then Tyson, kind of picks up that spot. But like you said, man, everything is on display with him. Everything, anything that you want back, he's giving you. So I mean, I think it's going to be too difficult to leave him off the roster.
I couldn't do it. Not after what I've seen over these 2 preseason games. I could not live. I could not sleep at night if I did that. This is the end of part 1 of the show. We'll be posting part 2 in a separate video.